Welcome to this session. We're going to be looking at Delta Math today. Delta Math is a free website-based math practice problem site that I came across a while ago, and kind of give you some background, see what it is off the bat, and then we'll kind of work your way through how you're going to create it. So prior to this, I first kind of in the classroom started looking for ways to do online practice with my students. The give them the problems, they turn in the papers, me giving them feedback was hard to stay caught up with. So I came across MathXL, which was through our publisher. It gave that opportunity, but had limitations on the amount of problems that we have. That kind of transitioned to Khan Academy, which was updated. It had the videos, and it still gave that, but it wasn't quite the best fit. And then I came across Delta Math here. Delta Math is a free site. It now has additional features you can buy, which we'll touch on briefly. But it's a site created by a teacher out of New York, a math teacher, that basically had the same thought. He wanted students to have a way to digitally do problems to get immediate feedback. So he started from scratch, he built it up, and now it is where it's at today. So before we go through the basics of setting up, let's just think of if we wanted to make an assignment. So this here is the landing page that the teacher sees. So this is a list of all of the topics that they get. So I'm just going to create an assignment for my students. Let's call it section 1.3. I'm going to give it to all my kids today because they all need work to do. And let's see, what skills do I want them to practice? I'm just going to search by exponent, if I can spell it right. And give them some exponent rules, maybe some fractional exponents, and some simplify. I think I'm going to give them 3 problems on each, and keep in mind, I'll come back and walk through all of this, just showing how we can set it up. I'm going to give them 3 problems on all of those, and I want it to be due, let's say the 20th, and I'll be nice. I'll give them half credit if they turn it in by the 24th, and create the assignment. So my assignment's done. It's sent out. The students have it. Can go on to their page. Again, we'll walk through all of this, but just showing. Here's section 1.3, and here are the problems that they have to work on. So just by going through and selecting the things, students now have problems to work on. They can practice. I get the feedback as I go through. So simple setup on the teacher side, sends the problems out. Students now have a list of problems that they can work on and get the practice. As they do them, they get the immediate feedback. This one looks like x to the 6th over x to the 7th. So I'm going to submit. And I got it correct, and I can move on to my next problem. So this opportunity to give them problems immediately, they get that feedback. If they get it right or wrong, let's get one wrong. It tells them they can try again. They can see an example. All of those things are there to allow them to see in Delta Math. So that was the jump ahead. Let's take a step back. Let's just go back to deltamath.com. Now, this is where you're going to go if you're going to sign up as a teacher. You need to create a teacher account first. You're going to create an account as a teacher. Set that up. When you do, you're going to say the number of classes you have, and it's going to give you a code, which I'll show you what mine would look like in a moment. Once that is made and you have a 6-digit code, you're going to share that with your students because they're going to come in, sign up as a student, and ask for your code. That gets them enrolled in your class, and then they're going to select the period that they join. So same page, everybody goes to, whether it's the student, whether it's the teacher, but as the teacher, you're going to log in and get here. So this again is what the teacher sees, not what the student sees. So if we go to manage students and classes, once you sign up, it's going to ask you to name your classes. Maybe it's a period or session or whatever section that you name it by. I have 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th, and I just made a practice class. From that, you can always add new periods if you want. You can change their name. You can remove them. Doesn't matter. But these are the classes I currently have, and here are my students I have enrolled in first period. So a student's going to go in. They're going to sign up, select your teacher code, which I can find right here. This is my unique teacher code. If you were going to go as a student right now and use that code, you'd be in my class. You don't want to be in my class. Okay? But you're going to get a code to share with your students. They're going to take that code, that enrolls them in your class, and they would then show up right here. So I have Ham and Michael currently in my first period class. Now, a lot of the management that you would do happens here, and most of the time it's the kid that forgets their password. So you have that option. You can go in and edit, and you can change their password. What I did in the classroom when they forgot, we hit change password. It pops up on my screen. They type a new password, they submit, they can go back and get to work. You can remove a student if they change. If they've moved periods, you can move them to a separate period. If they spell their name wrong, you can change their name. All of that is in here. It's really that roster management point. If a student usually transferred out of my class, I would remove them from the list because they could easily come back and add. If they went from one period to the other, transfer them. Unfortunately, if they go from my class to the teacher next door, I can't transfer them within Delta Math that way, but it's kind of within your class's roster. So that's manage students and classes. That's getting it set up for the classes that you have. That's the top one in the tools. Login and school information. All of this you really set up when you start, but the important one you need is that teacher code because that is what you're going to share with them. They ask you the school information and how they're grouped, and you're going to set all of that up to begin with. But once everything's up and running, that's the teacher code that you need. Some other tools, when you're finished with the year, you can close out your terms and it just archives all the students that you have. That's kind of an end of the year thing. Sample student page we'll look at in a little bit. That's how I looked at what a student sees from their side of it. The ability to copy assignments. If you wanted to transfer things over from another teacher code, you could use a teacher's code and bring it over if you share within like your PLC or in the district. And there's some other options there you can go through and look, but usually just not used that much. Let's go and look at our rosters. So right here in our first period, we have our two students. They already had an assignment made. We had section 1.1, 1.2, and then 1.3 we just made. I can sort by period if I want to limit them. Right now I only have two students, so that really, if I look at second period, they kind of go away. But I can see all of my students. If I wanted to change the assignments that I see, I can get rid of the ones that aren't being used right now or the past ones and only look at the current ones. So you can kind of look at that within your results. But let's go back here and look at what's available. So before we start assigning things, these are all the topics that Delta Math has for us. They are sorted by year. So M is going to be your middle school, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 on through there. And you can just scroll through and see all of these things. Now, what's cool about this is these are not individual topics. These are the categories. So if I select, let's say, parallel and perpendicular lines, all of these are problem sets within that category. So it's not that you're giving them parallel and perpendicular lines. You open that up, and now you can pick specific things in here. So if we wanted to look to see what that would be, such as graphing parallel lines, these are the problems they would see, but it's not the one problem that they see. If I go up here, and this is just on the teacher side, I just do new problem, it shows me all the different types of problems they would have, as well as the solution. Now, there is a problem bank for each type of problem set, and there's enough of them that a student's not going to sit there and keep refreshing until they see the same problem enough. There's enough variety there. Plus, you would see that from your side to see that they have like a bunch of problems they got wrong, and then suddenly they magically get them. You can kind of catch where they're going there. But this shows us what we look at, the types of problems that it has. Let's go back, and maybe there's a lot of information here, and we want to think of specific ones we want to look at. How about transformation? So if I search by transformation, let's do rotate a figure about an origin. Let's do this one. So I want to check to see if this is done in class, or maybe this is something I even project to my students before assigning them. This has a way to me go through and work through. And this one I really like because it's a good example of the quality of the experience that the students have. So if I read the instructions here, it's a crazy thought, but draw a circle centered at the center of origin such that the vertices of the figure is the circle. So let's draw a circle, okay? Now I'm going to draw a line through the center through one of the vertices, okay? I guess I can go on the circle, there we go. So now it gives me, and I can actually move, I'm ahead of myself, make my perpendicular. Now I can actually move to see how the rotation goes through and works. So this is not your typical, like, here's an example, type an answer, and it actually has an interactive piece in this. And so that graphing quality, they will see that they can actually play with it. Now, not all assignments are like this, telling me I'm wrong. It's a guided problem. So in this current state that we have where these students may not be getting learning in the classroom, you can look at guided types of problems for them to go through and kind of play with their math and see what they can do in order to submit. If I jump back, that's how they rotate about the origin as a guided problem. I can then go to other problems that aren't guided and they can get the practice. So what I like is the idea of maybe giving them a guided problem and then giving them an open problem from that. And we can see that guided problems are all the ones listed there. All of those types of problems, and that's from middle school up until we have Algebra 2 and programming, even on the bottom, all of these types of problems were ones that are going to be interactive, and it's going to give them tips as they go through and actually manipulate and solve the problem. Another one that I like is it has for multiplying polynomials by the box method or area model. This is one where they can take the actual pieces they have and move them into the area model. And as long as we maintain correct order, they're then going to say, all right, now I'm going to fill in our values. Maybe. And it's telling us along the way to making sure we're doing it correctly. If I did something wrong in that step, it would catch me and say, oh, go back and check your work. And now they've gone through and we can get our answer. Now, also it has the math type, which is going to be similar to like your Desmos in terms of typing things in, exponents. It brings up a little options when you need to add square roots or other math symbols. We see if we got it correct, and we are going through that. So that guided piece could show you how to work through, but then we could go, all right, well, we got the guided. Now we can just go to multiplying polynomials, and it gives us that next step. It's going to be more open, and they can see where they're at. It's up to you what you're going to assign. From this, I'm kind of clicking and looking at a bunch of them. I would always recommend before assigning a set, look at them, make sure you like them, hit new problem a few times. It's kind of in the realm. They're named pretty well, the assignments, but you just want to make sure the level hits. So you're not way above or way below what you're shooting for. They also have on some categories now, they actually say the level in them, and they're pretty accurate. So a student's not going to get something that, whereas this may have like basic coefficients on the X's, and then suddenly in the next problem, it's like 53 and 72 as coefficients. So they stay pretty similar within that. So again, we're still looking through all the types of options that are available for the teacher to pick. I can also search by standard. So if I had, see if I can remember a standard here. So 8th grade, let's go A2. So by standard, this tells me the problems that fit to that. So if you're going more standards based, you can search by there, find the standards that match, and add the assignments within there. If you're looking, particularly middle school, you can go over here and go by Common Core Standards, and it sorts the different assignments by grade level. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, this works really well because in 6th grade, we have the assignments that fit to the standards that match. Now, it's not all the standards. within them. Some of them just don't lend themselves or haven't had any made to it yet, but I could go through and look at that grade level and see, now we're in 7th grade, here's 8th grade, for example, the standards that fit to that. So if that first screen with everything there is a little bit too much, you can also sort to that. In the high school realm, it does go, it's just going to be by the domains. You have your real numbers, your functions, your algebra. So that's not going to have the separation, but they even have them sorted there as well. And it's up to your preference. Year and topic seems to be where I prefer to go, and I like to use that search feature. And it's pretty good. Like anything with like triangles, you know, what I have for triangles, like that. It brings up trig, could be there, but it also has isosceles triangles or right triangles, and we can even search Pythagorean theorem. We can search to there to kind of be a quick way to search through. So we can create a class. We can kind of look through all of this. We now have our students sitting there waiting. We need something to do. So let's create an assignment. So I kind of went through and did that quickly at first. When you want to create your assignment, create a standard assignment. Test correction is kind of like level 2. Get it set up, get it running. Test correction would be a situation where a student would have already had to take a test, enter in scores, giving them new sets of problems, and they kind of work points back. It's not a perfect fit. I wouldn't worry too much about that. This is not the test correction solution first. I think it's a way for students to practice and get feedback like that. That's where you want to kind of start. So something there. If you have questions or you want to learn more about it, you can always go up, and this is most of the topics he has. There's help, explanation, and videos. Can go through. You can see the stuff on there and what's that. And we'll jump back to that towards the end. But stay focused. We need an assignment. So let's now make section 1.4. You got to name the assignment. Now, we don't have to worry about specifics here because we can assign anything we want within that. So you know, whether by section, by numbered, by chapter, chapter review, whatever it may be, we're going to pick the classes that we want. So let's just do 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th. If I want to wait and post it later, so in the classroom, and if I was going to be gone, I might have had a set of problems they're going to work on when there was a sub, and I want it posted at 8 a.m. the next day. I could set it for a specific time. It shows up. They can work on it then, because I don't want them to be so excited that they work on their classwork the night before because they love Delta Math that much. So we can set the assignment to post immediately. If I look at this overview, I have these topics. So for example, linear equations, and let's get systems in there too. So these are all topics I'm looking at, and I can kind of start to plan for what the assignment's going to be. I can click on it, I can preview, okay, this is a good one I want, but I want to get it in the assignment. So right here, this tab is just naming it. What I need to go to is to the skills tab, and now kind of add a little plus sign right there. I don't know if you can see my screen quality, but there's a plus there for add it. This will now let us add that assignment over. So once we have that, I mean, we can still click on the name. We can still see it. If I'm looking at, all right, well, I got 2 steps. How about 3 steps? Let's see if it's appropriate. You can click, you can go new problem, you hit back. It works really nice in the way it interacts. You don't have to hit the back button up in the browser and you're not losing stuff. It functions really well. I'm going to add that one as well. And, you know, I want to get some practice in. We haven't, let's see, maybe some add fractions. I haven't had them practice add fractions in a while, so I'm just going to add that topic. So even though the focus of the assignment is linear equations, I can put anything in. So the idea of mixing up the practice that they have is the opportunity within Delta Math. So I've added these problems. These are all little subsets that they're going to have in the assignment. But let's look at how many problems they're going to have to do. So when you start off, it normally will default to 5 questions per set. I would recommend less is more starting off. The kids will really get into this if they can get like this feeling that they're getting them done and they're not being penalized a lot. So I kind of found a sweet spot at 3 problems per topic, just because it was enough that they're getting them correct, that they're not like guessing through, but they're not like this mountain of problems they have to do. If you feel like they need more problems, you can add more topics as needed. Now, I also have this idea of penalty, and I believe it defaults to 1 off when you first set this up. And the idea for this is how they work through to get to their goal. So under 2-step equations right now, they need to get 3 correct. Think of this as points. So they get 1 correct, they got a point. 2 correct, they got a point. They're at 2 points. They get the next one wrong, they're back down to a point because of their penalty took off 1. So then they would need an additional 2 more to get to that. In theory, it works, and in certain cases, I would use it, but it was very few. I like the idea of no penalty because they still have to get 3 correct, but if they get 1 wrong, it doesn't knock them down and start them over. If you want to start them over, you can just make it back to 0, and they'll just keep working and never quite get there, but it's an option. You see it best fit. I would recommend starting off, no penalty, maybe bring it in certain types of problems, like if it's you are going to get this correct, maybe a couple with a penalty, that might be a fit, but you don't want to overwhelm them. Because if we take a step back, right now, I have 3 topics. If there's 3 topics there and they have to get 3 questions correct, the minimum a student is going to do is 9 questions, which may not seem very many, but what about the kid that misses the problem? So the kid still has to get 9 correct, but for every problem they miss, they're going to have to do more problems. And if you add the penalty, it increases from that. And it can get overwhelming, and they just get stuck in that having to do so many problems. So 3 problems, no penalty. That's what I would recommend. Let's look at a few more features there. Show an example. That was the give me an example I clicked on earlier. It shows them a sample problem that they would see. The weighting, each of these sets are weighted the same. If I was looking at this and saying, well, 2 equations and 3-step equations are really what I want to focus on, even though I brought in add, subtract fractions, I can change the weight, maybe make that with less. That option's there. I typically didn't worry about that. Attempts, if they get a problem wrong, it's like, well, you're wrong, try again. They usually get a second attempt. The exception to that would be a multiple choice problem. It's usually just one shot at that. So you can change those. You can set your defaults. Again, I like 3. No penalty was good. Show an example. Attempts is 2, multiple choice is 1. You can save that permanently. Now I skipped over a couple of things there. Timed, required, and second. These problems are not timed. You can go on and you can see how long they take on some problems. And I've had it before where a student would log in, do like 1 problem. It takes them to the next problem. They close their phone or whatever to close the computer. They come back and they finish the problem, but it tells me it was 84 hours it took them to do the problem. I really don't think they spent 84 hours on it. It was just the time logged in. You then look at the next problem and it's like, oh, 2 minutes. It fits, but you see, but it's not a required thing. Where this comes into play is these types of problems up here. These timed problems, let's click on one here. Let's just go. This is kind of a challenge where it times them to see how long it takes them to complete. So if I start clicking on these, I got 1 out of 10. Okay, click. See if I can talk and do addition and subtraction at the same time. Up I'm at 7 out of 10. 9, and here, there's my best time. So I had a timed event to see how fast I could do it. I did it in 22.7 seconds. So that's the score I would get. Where this time to beat comes from is that's the preset that I have. Let's stop that, let's go back. So right here, when it's like time required and seconds, it's how many they need to do within that time. It applies to the ones with clocks on it. It's not a lot of problems. I didn't do it very often. I felt like that kind of rushed the students. And if it's something that they're not totally comfortable with and you're timing them and you're rushing them, they don't seem to respond well. It might be a fun like challenge if you wanted to see, hey, who could do this the fastest, and it's kind of a positive thing. I know in class when we went through trig functions, your trig with special right triangles, I would put that up and kind of have the kids go through and see if they're getting that memorization. It's not something I would live in on the Delta Math. I think there's a lot more beneficial things that they have to do, but that's where that one comes into play. So the timed, the guided, those are special types that they have. So we're in this category. Let's look what else we have. A mixed problem. So mixed problem, this is going to be kind of a randomized mixed set of problems. So let's think of something we want to bring into this. How about some expressions? So maybe we're on linear equations. We want to go back and make sure we're good with expressions. So let's change some words to expressions. Combine like terms, maybe some distributive property, little scientific notation. And what it's making over here is this kind of like smaller group in an assignment. So I'm going to call this mixed practice. Doesn't matter what I call it. And what that is going to do is the mixed practice is going to bring up a random problem from this set. They're not going to know which one it is. They're not going to know the title. Up here, when they have the 2-step, 3-step, and add, subtract, they know what the topic is. This, it's fair game. So you can name it whatever you want. If you're looking at it going, I really want to emphasize words to express combine like terms, I can weight it so those come up more frequently. I can require them to do 10 of them. Again, no penalty. Let's not penalize, just see if they can get 10 correct. And now that is going to be a mixed set of problems within their assignment that they have. So if we look as we're building this assignment, 3 problems here to correct, 3 problems here, 3, and then 10 within the mixed practice. Right now, we're looking at 19 problems if they get every single one correct. So like I mentioned before, the idea of a penalty, that kid that's getting some of them wrong is adding on to the 19. Make your first assignment, less is more. So they'll jump in, they'll knock out a bunch of problems, they'll feel good about it, and then you can torture them later. So we've gotten our skills. Let's go to due dates. I've already have some assignments due sooner, so let's just make this one the 23rd. Pick when the best time is to make it due. I've tried midnight, then kids do problems at 11:30. I've tried at 8 a.m. when class starts the next day. Then they do problems at 11:30 at night. It's just finding what best fits for it. What I really like though is I can add a late date. So it's due by the 23rd, but maybe the test is going to be on the 27th. If they don't get it done the 23rd, I'll still give them half credit up until that first due date. And then, I'll even give them 25% if they go back and do it before the last day of school. Anything they do within the due date, they get full credit on. It's the stuff after that, they get a percentage of it. So having that opportunity that they can still earn late credit, and it just pops up and they work on it and they add to their points. It just gives them a way to go do it. What I also this is you have those students that are like, I need more practice. I want extra credit. Give me more problems. What can I do to get my grade up? If I've added the late date and it's worth a fraction of it, a lot of it can go back. They can get that practice and they can earn points on. So as I've used this in class before, I would make it due test day or the end of the week, and depending on the type of scenario. And then the 25% credit was at the end of the school year, end of the semester. So the end of the semester, I go back, I download results, I update the handful of scores of the kids that benefited, but it gives them something to practice. It gives them something to go back to, give them the practice and improve their grade as they go. So we've named it, we've assigned it, we've picked the skills, features in there to kind of play with, and we've added our due date. Now we've assigned it. So take a breath before we go on. How are we doing, man? Got questions? How do I unmute you? You're still muted. I see you typed anything they do before the due date, they get full credit. Okay, yeah, so that's on when the assignment, they get the full credit after they get the partial.
Oh, sorry, I'm good now. Sorry, I thought I had myself unmuted. I'm bad. Yeah, so does that mean if a kid was halfway done with the assignment, they could get full credit on the first half and late credit on the second half?
Yeah, so if they did, our assignment had, let's jump here and just look at the assignment. So we just made 1.4. Our assignment had 4 parts. So if they did the first 2 parts ahead of time, they got full credit. 50% off would be what they haven't completed. So they would get the percentage off of the ones they've already done.
Got it.
Or the ones they have left.
Okay. And I heard that kids can attach pictures. Are you going to go over that, or do you know about that?
The teacher can require student notes. I have not played with this before, so I could see requiring them to do their work on a paper and then having them submit that maybe through Classroom, but I'm not sure how the notes goes. I can look in here at the end and we can check on.
No problem.
Okay. All right, so we've made our assignments. We go to student data, view assignments. This is kind of our landing page where we see all our current assignments. I can go up to change the assignments that I see. If 1.1 was already given, I can remove it. If 1.2 is gone. So it's kind of nice to sort them out. You don't want chapter 1 from the beginning of the year still there. And then you can even move them around in the order that it goes. Eventually it reaches a point where like they're off the screen. So it's good to do that. I can change what period I'm looking at as I'm going through. You can download them as an Excel file, which is basically going to be a table of all the results, which I usually prefer when copying to the gradebook because it's just easier to sort them out. And then you can always update what you have. So looking at the assignments that we have our 2 students. They went on and started section 1. Pam was 53% through and Michael finished. This is the average of the assignments that they have. So it's going to be careful with anything that's assigned so far, they're getting a 0 on. But if we look at section 1.1, this breaks it into the parts that we had. So it had 5 parts to it. We have our 1-step equations, type 1, type 5, some 2 steps, and some other equations from there. And what we see is the average as the class. We see what they got out of the 3 problems and then their score from it. Now, if we look a little bit further, let's look at the 1-step equation. This shows me what they got right or wrong within that. So we had the assignment, we had the categories. This is the category that we're looking at. And I can see that they both got their points. I can see how long they spent on it. I can also look at it, and if they got a problem incorrect, I can look at what their answers were. So Michael on his first attempt here did 6, then he did -8. The answer should have been 8. So this gives an opportunity of checking to see where their misconceptions are. And also sometimes you would get the occasional student come in and be like, that Delta math thing's wrong. That website, it doesn't know what it's doing. But what's really great is you can bring up that example and be like, interesting, because it's showing the right answer and yours is not there. You can see where that confusion does come in. Probably not as sarcastic as I just was. But we can see how they did, their points that they did. And what's really nice about this is a whole, if you have a whole roster of students, you can kind of see where they're struggling. Imagine if this went in reverse order, like Michael got the first 2 wrong and then figured it out. And you'll kind of see that progression. Pam just jumped right through, got them all finished, but the ones that are struggling, you'll see. And then sometimes you can even see that point where it clicks, they understand, and they get theirs correct. Also, here we got 4 out of 3. So let's look. Did 4 of them. Brings it up for us. It'll be on the student page. We'll show where that is. And that's one that as you introduce this to your students, them and try, it'll be something you want to look for to try to catch, because sometimes motivated students like Michael here will do far more than they need to. But let's jump back to view assignments. Again, in section 1.1, I can go in and look at the other ones. If I go to linear equations, so Michael did his problem. Like I said earlier, he got his first 2 correct, missed the next one, but then get the third. So we got the full points. We're not penalizing him. If there's nothing here, she didn't attempt it yet. If they were all X's, that means she would have got them wrong. But you can kind of get down and see on the individual level. But what I really liked as in the classroom is I could look up, I could see where everybody's at. I could see the averages, not only by person, but as a class, and see how everybody is doing as they're working through it. Let's go back again to all of our assignments. These don't have any results because they haven't been assigned, but we can see where we're at. Now, let's say we've assigned this in class and we want to make sure everybody's working. This gives us a lot of information, but it's not very live. It's not updating to show what we're doing. So the one I like is right here, student last action. So I bring this up, and normally if I have more than 2 students, it brings a whole list of my entire roster. And the top is the most recent problem done for each person. So Pam here did a problem at 9:26, and Michael did a problem at 9. So let's imagine it's 9:28. Everybody's working, and at the bottom of the list, Michael's still at 9:17. This is a good time to say, Michael, are you going to continue working with us today? It's been 12 problems, or 12 minutes since you've worked on a problem. And besides the shock of looking at you like, how did you know that? This is a way that we can see that we're working. Now, joking aside, as we're on distance learning, this is a way you can check back to making sure they're working. We want to make sure they're going through and practicing these things. If a student hasn't logged in a couple of days, this is a good opportunity for us to contact them and check and make sure everything's good, everything's going all right, if there's any questions, in a way that we can check to see that they're working. If they're not logging in and they're not completing problems, it's a good way to check to see where they're at. The other one is the problem logs. This shows us most recent down of the problems that everybody does. I only have 2 students, so it's not a long list here, but this saves everything that they've done. We could even search, if we want to see the most recent problems that Michael has done. You're getting the question of, hey, I'm struggling on this problem. How do I do this problem? You can actually bring it up. You can see what they did. You can see what their answer is, so it gives you something to talk to them about. You can also search by skills as well as assignments. So like 1.2, I could search by that and see how it's going. Well, I don't have any done because no one's worked on it. But it does give you a chance to go through and look through that whole list and not have to go through and dig through that whole spreadsheet of where the assignments are, but updating where everybody is. So that view assignments, you'll go there, find them, get the details you want. Let's now think about from the student side. What does the student see? And we jumped to this earlier right in the beginning, but let's kind of look a little bit more. Students get the assignment. They do not get this. This is not what they see. They cannot go in and practice any random problem they want. They can take an assignment that's open and continue to work on problems, like how Michael did the extra ones. But if we want to see what a student sees, this is sample student page. We're going to pick the period because it depends what period you've assigned the problems. So this is, if a student is in first period and they log in, this is what they see. Now, this is on a computer. Delta Math works really good on other devices, phones, tablets. It scales really well. It does not have an app. They're just going to go through the browser. But in terms of like the zooming and everything fitting and scaling, it's a fantastic website for that. So you don't have to worry about the weird zooming and finding where things are. If they're on a phone, it would basically be this screen, just scale down and not have all the extra stuff to the right. But this is what we see. So we have our currently 4 assignments. We made this one, 1.4. So let's take a look at what that one is. We had our 4 parts. our two-step equations, three-step linear equations, add and subtract fractions, then our mixed practice. Our mixed practice was just something we threw the mix together. So let's try this twice a number. And this right here is the student's most stressful part. It's like, are you sure? And they say, yes, we're right. So I go to my next problem, and now it's combining like terms. So it is randomizing what they are getting. Now, right here, it says I have 1 out of 10, and it says my score is 1. If I don't have penalties, that's not going to change. These will always be the same, the score and the record. What the student needs to do is stop when they reach this total. So back a minute ago, we had Michael work through that, and he got 4 out of 3 on the problem. So that's because he did an extra problem. He doesn't get extra points for it. He doesn't get penalized, but he's gotten his full points for that. So as you first start to implement this, whether it's in class or from a distance, look for the students that go beyond this. And I would just take a minute to remind them, a screenshot on the Google Classroom to say, hey, you don't want to do more than this. You've gone beyond that. Because when I've done it before, students will go through and they'll just do a whole lot of extra problems. And they'll come back and like, I finished it. I did like 25 problems last night. And then you go in and they did like 25 out of 3, but then you go back to this and they did nothing else. So it's just a little thing to catch, because it wants to allow them to do the extra practice, but they're not going to get the benefit from that. Now, it gives me my score. I've completed 3% of the assignment. That will continue to update, and the points will continue to show up as they go through on there. All right, so let's couple more things here. I mentioned sharing assignments earlier. If you want to copy an assignment or share it with your fellow teachers, basically they need your code as the teacher, just as your students would need, and they're going to search for it. So if you're watching this and you're like, I love section 1.4 assignment, what you're going to do is you're going to search my code, 614218. You search for that, it brings up all of my assignments, and then you can just select to add them over. You need to make sure you allowed the code out to others. So if someone in your PLC uses this and you're just going to share out common assignments, have their code, you can copy them in and you have access to them. The other part is up in our Delta Math Plus features. This is something the creator added recently. Everything I've showed you so far is free. It's there. I think it plans to remain free. It's his own thing he's created. This is not connected to a textbook or any process. This is his add-on features. This does have an expense to it. It is $50 for the year, but it has no limit on students that you bring into your classroom. But he is adding instructional videos. He lets you bring in your own YouTube links. You can create a test-like scenario, and then he has more features that he's adding in. It opened up about 2 months ago, this option for the Delta Math Plus features, and we do have some teachers in the district that are using it. And if you reach out to us, we can get in contact with you and kind of get the conversation going to how that's going. On the bottom here, it says, click if you have any questions. He is really good at getting back to you. I've asked questions that come up, you contact them, and usually within an hour or so, you get a response back. But he also has some samples of the video types of stuff that he has. Up here in the help features, this is where he does have the videos. So if there's something that you're like, Scott flies through, talks about creating an assignment too fast, you can go in, and he does have videos where he does explain the individual pieces for all of those things. Test corrections, something that interests you again. I would get the assignments down first, then look, but then even if you want to close out your term when you're finished, because you want last year's students with next year's. All right, another question, Marianne?
Yeah, when I share an assignment with teachers in my PLC, are they going to be able to see my student data?
So it's my understanding it would act almost like if it was a physical worksheet. They get the copy of the problems. They don't get the student information. And that also ties with if a student moves from your class to another, there's no way to transfer that over. So it does say separate. It's just going to be the problem sets that you pick.
Got it. Okay, another question was, can I edit the assignment once I get it from my PLC partner?
So you always have the opportunity to go in and edit your assignments. That's under the create and edit. Go to edit assignment, pick the one that you have. If you pull it over, it should not change their original, just makes a copy of it. But if you're looking at it and going, well, I really want to add some identifying points to it, you can add it, you can save it, and then it's something that's modified. I've had it before that I've given a problem set to it, and I go back and realize that it completely overshoots what I want, or it's off track, or I just didn't want it anymore. You can go into edit, you can delete the assignment. If they've already started it, it just disappears on it. So like students might lose credit for it. But if it's something you catch ahead of time, you can always go in and edit. Due dates is another one, making sure the due date, you can edit that. So that's a good use. You can save it, edit it, and go from there. Even adding it to other classes, but that does get a little bit tricky with the due dates.